Well, hello,
Oh,
greetings, greetings. It has been a hot minute. I have been missing in action. I know. But there's been lots going on in my incubating suite, as I like to call it. And I have been so excited about coming back. We want to make sure that we actually end 2024 strong. I have lots going on behind the scenes, which I shall be sharing with you towards the end of the year and in the new year. So stay tuned. And of course, as I always say, if you like what you see on the channel, do like, do share, and do subscribe to the channel because that way, whenever I upload new content, you will get notified immediately. So, as some of you may know, this channel started from a position, or rather from a point of pain. Many years ago, I had some health challenges and I used to suffer with a debilitating condition called endometriosis. And when I was going through the challenges, it was very difficult to, start sharing your woes. That's not really my style. But once I came out of it, came to the light, as it were, I decided to reach out to other women who are going through a similar challenge. It affects 1 in 10 women in the UK. And as a result, I decided to share my story. I should have got the book to share. I actually have, I shared my story in an anthology called Navigating Life. And I also decided to share my story here on this platform on YouTube. So the whole list of videos. Feel free to browse at your convenience, where I basically go into detail about, dealing with the challenges of the condition. Sadly, doctors didn't know much about the condition itself. And unfortunately, to add to the pain, the treatment I was getting was, sorry, just deal with painkillers, take painkillers, and that should be a lot. And this was after many operations and complications. I decided that was not my lot. I decided to embark on a journey to discover solutions to the issue. And lo and behold, I was able to find that through natural remedies and reverse all the symptoms. So that's just a very brief intro into as to how the channel came about. I then decided to broaden the platform, as it were, to engage with exceptional individuals that I come across in my daily life. Because I think to myself, if I encounter people who I find extraordinary, who are doing, amazing things out there, surely there must be one, maybe two other people who think the same thing. And that brings us to our lovely guest who's here today in the room, who I'm very proud to also call my friend, Miss Anne Bodley. Now, usually, some of you may know, I don't tend to go on script, but on exceptional days like today, when you are dealing with exceptional individuals like Miss Bodley, I need a little prompting. So do bear with me while I just give a very brief intro. So, Miss Anne Bodley is an international lawyer with 20 years' experience from leading international firms, the UN, and global banks. I'll just give a very brief highlight, synopsis of some of the organizations and firms that she's worked for. Currently with Axiom Law, Freshfields, she works as their senior legal counsel. She's also a teaching fellow at Queen Mary University of London. She's worked for HSBC Bank, both here in the UK and the US. The list goes on. I mean, she's going to have to help me to fill in the blanks. She has also um, got a lot of international experience in the international development sector. She's worked for the US Agency for International Development, and this has taken her to places like Moscow, Washington, D.C., etc. And this lady has also got a number of accolades behind her. I'll highlight a few. In-house Lawyer of the Year, Next 100 Years, Inspirational Women in Law Awards. And this was for achievements towards equality, greater equality and diversity in the legal profession through LexLead. LexLead we're going to come to in a minute. She also got an outstanding International Corporate Counsel Award with the American Bar Association. And again, this was for contributions to international law and support for the least developed countries. with Lex Lead, and she was a finalist for Advanced Global Australian Awards. And here she was nominated for work with the world's approximate 50 least developed countries with Lex Lead. Leadership roles that Anne has occupied include Lex Lead, of course. She is the founder, president. Lex Lead is a program that offers annual essay competitions to students across the world's least developed countries. 2 internships, placements with the World Bank and leading NGOs, 3 mentoring. She manages all the fundraising, filings, program monitoring, evaluation, publications, conferences, etc. I'll leave it there for now. I mean, there's a whole host to this lady, and I can't wait to be able to share details with them. She's written publications, how she actually finds the time to live life, to work, and to make a real impact in that space. Lex Lead remains a mystery to me. So I'm so proud and so excited to present to you my dear friend, Anne Bodley. Anne, welcome to my platform.
Thank you.
So Anne, can I just ask very briefly, where did life begin for you?
So Australia. I am from was born up in northern Queensland in Australia and grew up in Adelaide, South Australia, and left when I was about 16, nearly 17, wanting to come to the UK. For a long time, ended up in lots of different places other than the UK, and still really have enjoyed getting to know lots of other parts of the world as well. So I worked twice in Russia in the course of that. I've worked in the US, in New York and Washington, D.C. I was 4 years in Tanzania with the UN, and that gives a rough run through.
It does. Where did you study?
I studied in the US. I got both an undergraduate degree and then I got my law degree. Ended up going back to the US for the law degree with an exchange program in Paris. And then I did some work at Cambridge after I got my JD in the US.
Amazing. And of course, you were called to the bar in New York in
Yes.
2000, I believe.
Yes.
Amazing, amazing. Your first job?
First job ever was, well, there was a venture capital fund that I worked with in Washington, D.C. But I very quickly got my way. That was off the back of having interned with the US Agency for International Development in Washington. So every time my bosses left the room with that job, I was at that point, faxing out my CV, but I was getting my CV out there and eventually was given, I was given indication that I ended up getting a local hire position with the US Agency for International Development at the US Embassy in Moscow by getting over there, having had the internship. I had good connections with the agency, and that led to a position.
Wow, wow. What is your best job to date so far, out of all the roles
Uh,
you've applied, of which there have been a few?
that was amazing. I can certainly say that one.
Which one is
That
that?
the
Mm,
USAID job was a tremendous, yeah, it was just hugely exciting, especially at being, early 20s. You feel like you learn a lot more than you've got to contribute to manage, but to be involved with all of the programs at the time, working with World Bank, IMF, EU, TASIS, all of these agencies, and of course the US government in rolling out the funds, rolling and then project managing. I had a role of setting up the Russian capital markets, getting the privatization program uh, set up, or get the last parts of the privatization program around the whole of the former Soviet Union, and doing a lot of traveling, going back to Washington to give updates as to how the programs were going. It was that was one of the most exciting roles I've had, and of course then. followed by prosecuting the Rwandan genocide with the UN was also similarly just amazing.
Mm.
Incredibly sad, but amazing.
Of course. And that's the thing, you've been very fortunate to travel so extensively with your work. I mean, my ears always prick up when I hear Africa, but sadly with that Rwanda role, obviously that had a slightly different slant to, the meaning
Yes,
of work.
a
Um,
really tragic stories and part of that. Um, but it also gave me a huge opportunity to get a lot more. I mean, I feel like I have a real connection. I'm at the very least, I'm a friend of Africa, of all of that. Um, and so it's not all bad. There is, and the role that we had with the UN for all of the issues as well. At least at the end of the day, you are doing something to um, address what people went through and recognize, bring some level of recognition for the very, the absolutely traumatic
mm,
experience that it was for so many.
some kind of closure. Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So
What, yeah, which was the best country that you found, um, I don't know, some level of peace in your professional life where you just felt like, yeah, this is working. I'm in a great space, meeting some fabulous people, enjoying the culture, and also I've got this great job.
my goal had always been I always liked the idea of the UK and all of the every country that I've been to is the best in its own way. Um, but certainly the UK was always something that it was of interest to me, and partly that's because it's so easy to get from the UK to so many other parts, even to get down to Senegal, or other parts of there are parts of Africa that aren't too far away. So the UK's got a lot of advantages.
Mm, mm. That's really interesting as you're talking, and I'm recognizing that having grown up in Australia, the way you would view the UK is different to how, somebody like me, having grown up and lived here, would view it. We take a lot for granted, but the location of the UK, like you say, because it's, its proximity to Africa, to Europe, and dare I say, even to America, certainly in comparison to Australia, makes it hugely advantageous.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Australia, absolutely. Of course, that's home. So that will always have a very special place for me. But yeah, it's 24 hours on a plane to get there, you know, and then another 24 to get back. So
Yeah, kind of makes a difference. Kind of makes a
yeah,
difference. Hmm. Dare I ask, what do you do in your spare time, if you have any spare time, Anne?
I have lots of really good friends. I'm looking at one of them, and so I enjoy time with friends, going to art galleries, getting out for the weekend, going to Paris or Geneva or places like that, because from the UK that you can get there, getting up to Scotland, seeing some beautiful parts. I've got friends over in Ireland. I have on a couple of occasions gotten down to Senegal. Um, and so I haven't traveled as much as I used to since COVID, but I have I have done a lot of traveling in my spare time.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I was listening to you. I mean, here's a lady who, very, very bourgeois, my friend Anne, she would call me up and say, Simone, do you fancy checking out the Chanel exhibition? These are the kind of things that she loves to do. So, yeah, it's good to know that you make time out for fun and for doing interesting things, for sure. But
The only
yes, I
Chanel
love
I
it.
have in my wardrobe, though, is perfume. So it's a little bit out of my price range. Um,
I do remember before the pandemic, you did have a goal to, I can't remember what the number was. You're gonna have to help me out because you have traveled extensively. When I say extensively, this woman has been all around the globe. Please remind me, Anne, because the
I was
pandemic
trying
kind
to
of put a
reach
spanner in the
100
works.
countries. I was trying to reach 100 countries and I've made it to 95 and I haven't
That was because
really.
of the pandemic, right?
Yeah,
I remember. 95.
I've been
I'll
to
just
about
let that
95
marinate
now.
for a
Yeah.
bit. 95 guys, different countries. And
Well, I
I
know
want
people,
to travel.
I know people that have been to 150, so you know.
I guess it's all relative, but
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near 95. At least now I have a benchmark.
Yeah. So,
But yeah,
yeah, I was sort of thinking I'd try to get to 100, but I haven't managed that yet. I need to just go
okay,
tramp around South America and pick up a few more countries like that. You need to go to some places that all the countries are kind of close together so you can see more than one in a trip. So,
for sure, for sure. But why the drive? Why the desire to travel so widely?
um, it opens your eyes in a way that you just can't even foresee. It makes sense of things. You start to understand people's perspectives rather than, and you start to see the commonality between all of us is to, I could be, if had I been born like my Tanzanian friends, I could easily have seen being, if fate had been different, and had I been born Tanzanian, I would approach life very much the same way that they do.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of perspective that you get, and you start to understand the history behind different nations, different peoples within those nations in a way that you don't. It's just like learning a language. You can sit in a classroom and try to learn it, and you're never going to be particularly fluent because you're not even thinking of scenarios that where you need, once you're actually in the environment, it comes out much more organically because you're just in the situation where you need to. So it's similar to that where you're picking up, you're learning things that you don't even know that you're learning by traveling.
It's so true. It's so true. Which country would you say out of the 95 has had the most impact on you?
Um,
I know that's quite a question.
that is hard to answer. Um,
Just
there are
maybe,
definitely countries that I've really enjoyed getting to know.
like
Um,
you mentioned, it makes you appreciate. It just takes the gratitude thing to a whole other level. Maybe one that just really got you thinking and just made you see life in a totally different.
well, I mean,
Uh,
I could say
um,
Rwanda,
oh yeah.
because I can't, I don't know how I would get through an experience like the genocide if I had been there, myself trying to keep body and soul together. And it's immensely tragic. I mean, I was always over the tribunal was in Tanzania. It was over the border in Tanzania for a lot of reasons. It certainly made it easier for us to bring in witnesses, rather than have, to bring in witnesses for the tribunal, for the trials, etc. Um, but the story that we lived in Tanzania, but the stories we were processing were all about Rwanda, about the different corners of Rwanda and what happened, what tragic circumstances happened there.
Mhm.
And that is, it's the Rwandans have shown a huge amount of resilience. A lot of there's a lot of processing to do, but to go forward as a country after that, um,
Yeah, I hear you. And, having had the good fortune, I say that reservedly, to have, traveled to Rwanda, it just blows your mind because, one wouldn't be surprised if you were to go there and still see elements of war torn, deprivation, people walking around hanging their heads, but you don't get to see any of that. Obviously, there are parts of the country that where, they've still got
I thought
challenges.
I thought both the Tanzanians and the Rwandans had a lot of dignity, and so they they're both they're both there's a lot in the cultures that is very admirable.
Mm,
Um, so it isn't all the story isn't all about the pain that they went through, that the Rwandans went through, and that included, Tanzania hasn't gone through that, but has had refugee populations within its borders. It's had its own trying times as
mm,
well. Both countries are not among the wealthiest in the world, and that is a constant challenge. That again is something that I was born into quite different circumstances, than trying to make ends meet in a way that you do in Tanzania or Rwanda. And so it really opens your eyes as to, you know, how you've got no control over the circumstances you've been born into versus could so easily have been. I could so easily have been
absolutely.
born into.
Any of us.
Yeah.
Mm, mm. It just shows the strength of the human spirit, right? It tells you that, these are the things for me that just tell you how resilient we are and that nothing is beyond our reach. I've been to a few countries in Africa. I would hazard a guess. I know you have been to many, many more, so you probably have a bit
18.
more
I've been to
stories.
18 countries in Africa so far.
There you go. And you will know that they vary in terms of how developed, how they kind of utilize the natural resources, et cetera, et cetera. And countries like Rwanda stand out because, yes, there are the, real tragic stories out there. For instance, in Sierra Leone, where my family are from, all the wars that happened there in the 90s has left a huge stain on the country, um, and sadly hasn't got to the point where we would like it to get to compared to some of its sisters in the continent. So I take my hat off to our fellow Rwandans, and indeed similar countries across the globe, like Cambodia as well, where I traveled many years ago, and again similar situation. Despite all the tragedy of yesteryear, they're really pushing themselves. But yes, the other question I wanted to ask you, coming back to the travels and all the things you've achieved, I know that you speak many, many languages. Ms. Bodley, how many
Not very
languages
well.
do you speak? A few more than me, that's for sure. Got
I've learned a couple of languages, yeah.
it. Which ones do
Nasema
you speak?
kidogo Kiswahili. I do speak a little bit of Swahili, but that's not my best language by any means.
Russian is the
Hmm.
best. Then
Russian,
French,
French, bit of Spanish.
Spanish, Portuguese.
No, I really don't speak any Portuguese.
Spanish, I was thinking. That's amazing. Anne, it's been such a huge honor to be able to delve a little bit more into the lady, the character, the personality that is Anne Bodley. I cannot wait to delve into the other side of Anne, or is it Mama Anne they call you?
I'm Alex Lead.
I'm a Lex Lead in your
Yeah.
capacity as president founder of Lex Lead. Lex Lead, I have to say, declaring an interest is one of my favorite charities. Actually have the privilege of being part of Anne's charity. I volunteer as one of the judges, and that was one of the reasons that sparked my interest. And this interview really should have happened a long time ago, but it's happening today. And I'm so excited to share with people the amazing work that you do on Lex Lead. Um, yeah, yeah, I'll leave it there for now. We're going to take a short break and we're going to come back and we're going to delve into Mama Lex Lead, her passions, how it came about, how it started, what she's doing, her dreams, her goals, where she sees it going. But we're going to take a short break, as I say, and we're going to come back momentarily. Thank you, Anne. Thanks for that.